Okay, cool.
I'm not even doing it, man.
What's up, guys? I'm Windsurf Pro.
I'm Wingfoil Pro.
And I'm still Average Joe.
Welcome to What the Hell is a Backloop?
On today's episode of Secrets of the Send, we're going to be breaking down the difference between a back loop, a push loop, and a frontside 360 with our special guest, GWA rider Max Robinson.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Max, if you want to give a little bit of your background to let people know why you are truly qualified to define what is a back loop, what's a push loop, and what's a frontside 360.
For the last year and a bit, I've been on the Wingfoil World Tour. Ironically, actually, we don't categorize back loops and push loops as different things, but I believe that they are different things, and we're going to get into why. I'm also on the riders committee, and we do the trick list with a bunch of other riders that are on the tour. So yeah, I mean, I'm in those conversations, and I'm happy to discuss this with these guys today.
So Max, like you said, the GWA currently doesn't count all the moves separately. So why would we go and do this?
I think it's just for the Wingfoil community, you know, like for people that are working on new moves to kind of have clarification about those moves. So for instance, the difference between a 360, a back loop, and what we're calling a push loop, I mean, those are all very different technical moves. So being able to kind of sort out what they are and kind of talk about how we think people need to do them, I feel like is why we want to be chatting today. So yeah, if you guys agree with me.
100% with you.
100%.
Like we were saying, everybody has a bit of a different classification for these moves. But from my understanding thus far, is a 360 is when the board stays below the body through a 360-degree rotation. Back loop is when the board and foil go above the body during what looks like a 360 rotation of the board. And a push loop is when the board goes above the body, but also the board comes up above your head, and then when the board is at the peak of the rotation, the wing comes through before the board finishes the rotation. The wing is actually out in front or at the peak of the rotation, and then you're falling out of the sky afterwards. I think that's what makes it a push loop compared to a back loop, which is ultimately the wing is typically fairly close to your body. You never really throw it until you open up at the end of the rotation.
My stance with what a back loop and a push loop is pretty similar to what you had, Max. I base mine off of windsurfing back loop and windsurfing push loop. In a windsurfing back loop, the board is what leads the rotation. So in a back loop in winging, basically the board will lead the rotation, it'll go over the body, and it'll be what pulls you down through, and the wing will follow through at the end. A push loop in windsurfing, you go vertical with the board, so the board will go above you, but rather than letting the board be what pulls you through, the windsurf sail, you push on it, so that way it flips the whole rotation back over. So in winging, it would be, like you said, the wing will be whipped over first, and it'll be what pulls the rest of the rotation around. And then a 360, like a frontside 360 to me, is when the board, rather than doing a looping motion, where the nose will ride around in a circular motion, or the board will do this like cylindrical spin, it does just a flat horizontal spin, whether it be sideways and just spinning sideways like this, or flat spinning like this. As long as the board does not do this kind of end over end spin, it's not a loop.
When the foil goes above horizontal, it starts becoming the back loop. But below it is like more like the 360.
Yeah, I would still argue, even at that steeper angle, it all depends on how the board rotates around. Because the board can go straight sideways and just spin like this. And that's still a 360 in my opinion, because the board does not go out in front of you, loop over, and come down behind you.
Right.
So.
Oh, interesting.
Exactly.
So it has to kind of move from forward to backwards.
If you think of like a loop, it's a circle, like this. So the board will go out in front of you, come over, and then come back around the other side. Like a windsurfing back loop, you go up, it turns around, and it comes back down the other way.
Like riding a skateboard on one of those circles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's almost like once you break past that like 45-degree angle, that's kind of when your body is ultimately also going to be below that foil and below the board.
Right.
And then more likely to look like
a loop.
Yeah. Exactly, rather than obviously a 360.
Right. And but to Alex's point, if it goes up that far, but you actually just loop here, you don't actually do the loop backwards, then it's probably that 360.
I would call that a 360. And we have some clips here that really blur the line between that.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to get into and break down right now.
So let's get into it.
So I do this really weird rotation. You see how my wing and my board come through at the same exact time? What would that be?
I'll classify that as a 3.
Yeah?
Yeah, especially the fact that you don't allow your head and upper body to come back. Because your body's upright,
Yeah.
your body's not really looping. It's just kind of like your board's kind of working on a sideways axis. So they would probably count that as a tweak 360.
As a tweak 360.
Yeah, on the
Okay.
I mean, they would just put it as FS 360, or
Got it.
sorry, FS 3 on the scorecard. But yeah, like that's probably counting as a 3.
So is it possible that your hips have to be above your head for it to count?
Yeah.
So then
Yeah, that's like, yeah.
angle of body is also a big part of a backloop. It's
Yeah.
not just about what the board and the wing does.
Yeah, exactly. So that one's close, but I think that's a 360.
Okay, I argue the opposite actually.
Yeah.
I argue that this one's a back loop because if you watch the way the board rotates around, it rides around in that like cylindrical motion.
But it also at the same time it kind of goes off to the side, and you can see that the only point in which the foil goes above his head is here, right? So like because it doesn't really necessarily go up and over from start to finish, then I feel like it's more like a tweak 3. So if it goes up and over from start to finish and it rides that axle you're talking about
Yeah.
from start to finish, then I feel like that's when it's more like a proper back loop, or closer to. So this one, it's riding that axis only at a period of time, like a short.
It's only on the way up. The back
Yeah.
loop needs it on the way around.
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah. And I'm pretty sure how they would score it as well. That's on the edge too.
on the edge.
Yeah, that's on the edge as well. But I think this is.
I think it's a 3.
I think this is a 3
Because I go up, I bring my legs all the way up, but then I only actually rotate
in front of him.
in front of myself.
The board never rides around here. You see how it stays in front of him the whole time? For me, that's a 360.
Yeah, it's a very similar rotation to the last one, in my opinion, and yeah.
But the actual rotation happens in front of me as opposed to behind me.
I think that you just said it there, like the biggest thing I think that takes a lot of these moves from being a cork 3 to a loop is looping your body as well. A lot of these moves that you're doing, like the board is doing the rotation, or it's doing close to the rotation that we're looking for, but your body isn't as well.
Right.
So it's figuring out how to like also put your body through that rotation, through the maneuver, that I think gives it the classification, in my opinion.
This is our real boundary breaker. What the heck is this?
Because you see, I come through all at once. Everything comes through at one time.
Yeah, so that's a back loop. That's not a push loop.
But
But this is also, you know, marred like on the edge too,
Oh,
because your body is not going below the board necessarily entirely, right? So since your body's kind of on the same axis as the board, during like the flipping motion, I would argue that this is just a very tweaked out 3.
I could see there being room for a new name for this, like a cork 3 maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's not quite like the tweak where you go back. It's not quite a flat spin 3. But it is still a 3 though.
for me, the way I throw this one is exactly the same way that you throw a cork on land, like a corkscrew spin. You kick up and over, and then you pull it. Then you pull through.
Exactly.
And so for me, that's exactly the way I throw this.
I think that's what it is really. It's a cork 360, and then like the more you really initiate trying to go, you know, with the board over top of your head, the more backloop it becomes, and then
GWA.
yeah.
Listen, take notes. So here we have Pepe Kraus. He's a wave sailor, windsurfer who's come to winging. Now joined the slingshot team with you guys. But
Have 'em.
I am like super confident that what he does and what we're about to show you from him, this is backloop.
Yeah.
Going upwind,
His hips go above his head.
and he's holding the wing the whole time around until the very end.
Yeah.
That's backloop.
Yeah, and you can see like the way his board also and his body are following the same kind of axis through this rotation. I think it really it really is clear to me that this is also a back loop. It's interesting though, like he holds that wing
So far back?
for so long in the powered position going forward before he rotates it. And it's super cool. He does it like super steezy.
Part of what that video shows me is that for a really clean back loop, he keeps his whole body position the same as he was riding, and he just rotates like that.
Yeah, it's like he makes sure that as the board comes up, he brings his hips back with the board, his upper body back with the board.
It's like what we said earlier about how a back loop, the board is what leads the rotation. And then in a push loop, it's the wing that'll lead the rotation for the second half. For the back loop, it's the board entirely, because like he basically didn't use the wing.
Yeah, I think honestly that's the best definition as well, and also just talking about the axis.
Yeah,
so far, I think we're in a, like it's cool to actually see this come together and be like, this is what the differences are.
Exactly.
And I wonder if we'll like actually end up getting the push loop in as its own move on the trick list sometime.
So this is Luca's, and Luca, I think that this is a front side 360. And the reason why, while everything does kind of go higher than him and he gets super vertical, if you noticed, the board just spun in front of him rather than looping around.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cork 3 for sure. It's a cork 3. Like, I can see what he's saying because, I mean, in a way, almost like his body, the board is almost above.
It is. It is above him.
Yeah, it is above him for a second there.
But it's in front of him, not above him,
exactly.
above him.
It's not looping, for sure. It's spinning on a horizontal axis, not like that front to back across the wind sort of y-axis, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, that's what makes it a cork 3, for sure.
Okay, we got Mr. Chris with the insane
rotation, and it's like...
But it's not a back loop, is it? Oh, interesting.
Holy
laid out backflip.
It's like a laid out backflip, actually, this one to me.
But I would say it is a push loop still.
It's just super extreme of an angle because he's throwing it so early before the board goes vertical. Like he's throwing it before the board even gets above him. So that's why it's like yanking him around like a backflip. Yeah, next up we have balls, and this is like the push loop.
Yeah, so you see like the board is still behind him and he's done the rotation with the wing already. But now, like before he comes crashing down, he has to pull the board back underneath him. Obviously comparing that to back loop that Pepe was doing, where the wing is still behind him. It's like not even at that, you know, it's not even close to where Balls has it at the apex of his rotation. You know, right now they're actually scored the same move, but they're clearly very different moves. Yeah.
So now that we've looked at all these clips, I think that we have a pretty solid understanding of what is a back loop, what's a push loop, and what's a 360. So Max, you want to define what the back loop is?
Yeah, for sure. So I think we've decided now that the back loop is when the board does a looping rotation. 1, 2, the board goes above the body through the rotation, and 3, the wing comes through the rotation at the end of the maneuver. So you're holding the wing back while the board and the body go through the rotation first, and then the wing comes after, closer to the landing of the maneuver.
There's really only 2 key things that define what a push loop is. 1, you're going to go into the rotation like you would a back loop, so you're going to go vertically with the board going over you. But then for the second half of the rotation, number 2, you're going to lead the rotation with the wing, which will then pull the board through. So we know how to define the difference between a push loop and a back loop, but how do we define the difference between the push loop and back loop versus a frontside 360? So we're going to give you guys a definitive line.
Both the back loop and the push loop are going to accomplish 2 things, and these 2 things are what define the difference between them. And so you've got to do a looping motion with your board, and at the same time you've also got to have your hips at some point pass over your head, meaning that your whole body is upside down. And so if you do one of these things, one or the other of these things, you're going to end up with a 360 of some kind. Whether it's a flat 360 or a tweak 360 or what we're calling the cork 360. But if you can manage to accomplish both of those characteristics in the move, so you're going to be looping your board and it's going to be your hips above your head, then you've entered into the push loop and back loop territory.
Congratulations, you have crossed the line.
Congratulations, you're pro.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
I might even do it in a minute.
So there you have it. Those are what defines a push loop, a back loop, and a 360, as well as the line that separates the 360 from those other two moves. Let us know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree. If you have a different opinion, we'd love to hear it. And of course, we want to see you send the clip to us so we could see you do it.
Keep sending.
Keep sending.
Super special thanks to our guest Max.
Stoked to be here, guys. You're awesome to chat with.
Won't be the last time we see him.
I hope not.
If you feel like you're learning something or have been enjoying the content, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.
And if you want to stay in touch with all of our future videos, hit that notification bell as well.
This has been Secrets of the Sand. We'll see you guys next time.